This is Blacklisted News Radio. It's the 6th day of April, 2013. My name is Doug Owen, and it is extremely awesome to be with you here, live and direct from the Blacklisted Radio studios, deep in the heart of Austin, Texas. Independently produced, and now a Saturday morning podcast. We've made it. What's up? You can join me live at blacklistedradio.com. We have an interactive chat room there. It's good to see some of the fine fans and friends of the show. DJ, Lizzie, J Jink, of course, Mike Chambers, my muse when it comes to doing talk radio. So we can get into the conversation. I am actually a little nervous about doing this. It's been a crazy week. Took the whole week off to kind of, well, to rest and to get ready to do this radio show. Of course, Monday, we shut down Oracle Broadcasting. I shut down oraclebroadcasting.com, the website, and you can go there and get all of the archives. And we had a huge mass exodus of archives to the tune of a very large data bill this month, which is cool. It's awesome that we've been able to, I think, really highlight all of the great archives there. And you can check out the website. We've done some things to it to kind of make it more intuitive for people that do want to get all of the favorite shows. And we're going to leave that up for the foreseeable future. So that happened Monday. I also put down my best friend, my dog Tia, Monday. So after a long bout with cancer, actually not a long bout, it took over in just a matter of months. And so that was heartbreaking, something that I knew that was going to be happening. I didn't really try to time both of those things to happen on April 1st, which was April Fool's Day. Plenty of fools to talk about here in the podcast tonight, or this morning. Used to saying tonight. It's early morning. I don't think I've ever really done live radio other than on other people's shows this early, ever. So this is new. It's nice. It's quiet in the studio. Not much happening here. Everybody's tucked away, and it's really exciting to be doing this. But at the same time, it's been quite a trying week, and so I've been an emotional mess. And so it's probably great that I wasn't able to do live broadcasts, and it was really nice not having to worry about doing live broadcasts and to be able to kind of recharge some of those batteries. So thank you to all of the nice people out there and fans and friends that have shared your well wishes and condolences with not only Oracle Broadcasting, but with my pup as well. So it's pretty hard. It's pretty hard. It's amazing how much more, I think, love, sadly, we end up having for animals. And that's why the environmentalists, the Al Gores out there, and, of course, the politicians that are sliding us into different agendas that are not in the animal's best interests. There's so many examples of that. We do have a few of them we might look at. But it's because it pulls your heartstrings. I have never, and I'm not afraid to admit this, when my grandmother passed, both of them, when my grandfathers passed, I was sad. I did shed tears, but nothing like the wailing and the constant crying that happened after having to put my dog down. So it was pretty. It was actually not as bad as I thought it would be. The shot, the lethal injection, only took about a half second to take her into a deep sleep, the dirt nap. So that wasn't too horrible, but it's just all of the lead up to that moment. It's kind of like doing the show. That's the huge lead up, the week lead up to this moment, to doing the live broadcast. And so in a lot of ways, this is, it looms in a good way. You're looking forward to it, but yet you're pretty excited about it. Same thing for putting down the dog in a kind of weird way, because I was not excited about it, but I did feel that it had to happen. It was the right thing to do, and that it was going to benefit her greatly. So, yeah. Well, welcome We're going to be talking about all the crazy things from North Korea to bird flu, dead animals, all over the place. If you look in the Chinese rivers, you're going to find pigs, you're going to find swans, you're going to find just about any kind of animal you can imagine, and they're dying in mass. And good for you out there. They're working on the vaccine. So that's happening. Of course, North Korea is a great distraction, and I'm still pretty shocked that most of the pundits have really kind of laughed this off, this whole nuclear crisis. We hype the yellow cake uranium, but when it comes to Kim Jong-il or Un, his chunky son, blowing up the world, people think it's pretty laughable. It's pretty funny. I was listening to Rick Perry, who's the governor of Texas, and he said, well, of course, Mr. Un wants to blow up Austin, Texas because of the economy and because Rick Perry's done such a great job. So to see some of the really disgusting ways that people are exploiting the tragedy, or trying to highlight or push their own successes, and that's what he was doing, is nothing less than shocking. But I guess kind of to be expected. He'll take credit, just like most politicians, for anything that is going well. So the tar sands that are leaking in Arkansas, not a good look for the Keystone XL pipeline. So there's a lot of energy debate that's going on right now, and Obama's losing a lot of his base because guess what? He is a bitch to the oil cartels, and the energy industry does control a huge portion of the political spectrum today. And if you look at some of the more upper echelon political elite, they happen, and not just in this country. I mean, Dmitry Medvedev's a good example in Russia, but here in this country, they happen to be energy guys. Look at Dick Cheney. So there's a lot of stuff that I've got on the table, and we're going to be talking about the UN gun treaty and how that is being used in a lot of different ways to control other countries. I think more people in the United States especially are worried about what that means for their gun rights and whether or not the blue helmets will have a list of how many weapons you have in your home. So that is a deep, deep concern that I think a lot of Americans have been vocalizing all week long. So there's that. There's going to be a lot of stuff to cover today in the podcast that we will get to, but I do want to kind of look at the podcast itself and what we're trying to accomplish here with this show. I say we because you out there that listen and download this show, the readers of blacklistednews.com, the followers on Twitter, I mean, this is a huge interactive community of people that care about the world. And so that's the most important aspect to it. Okay, it's really easy to go out there and get tons of people that are not going to invest in an idea. They're not going to invest in freedom, and they just don't give a crap. They don't care. And so I'm not concerned about the number of people that download the show, although seeing numbers go up is a great way to quantify that you are reaching new people. But I think one of the really cool things about this podcast, doing it independently, doing it Saturday morning in this venue, really requires people to want to be invested in the show. It's not just people that happen to be listening to the stream because they like the show prior or they like the network, and this show, myself, just happen to be voices that are currently there. You kind of have to go out of your way and really want to be part of this podcast and this community to listen to it. Great thing, you don't have to be part of that really to enjoy the benefit of listening to it. So we're going to be doing it in a 2-hour format. I think that's important because we have commuters that will be downloading the podcast. So hopefully we'll have at least bare minimum live 8 hours of content per month, not to mention the fact that we're going to be doing a lot of interviews, impromptus. So it's important that you check us out on Spreaker. You can go to blacklistedradio.com. That's the portal. And there are tons of different things there and initiatives that will help you keep up with the show. It's really easy on Twitter. If you are a fan of broadcasts and podcasts and live talk radio, Twitter's a kind of handy navigation tool. You don't have to give all of your information to it. And at this point, they're not building their own phones yet. But it's a way to kind of keep up with not just this show or podcast you like, but also other news and information. So it's handy. And just like anything, it takes anything on the internet anyway. It only takes what you give it. The problem is that we have these unreasonable expectations, or at least a lot of stupid people, consumers, have unrealistic expectations of your privacy being kept by Mark Zuckerberg. And the same people that have probably seen most of the headlines about the huge data leaks that have come out of Facebook. And Twitter's not a sweetheart when it comes to this. They are, giving your tweets over to the feds. And you can, any American company is going to be subject to that. At any point, if there's a warrant, if a judge or the shadow government decides that they want to know what you've been tweeting about, they can get a warrant. So in an age of globalism, it's harder and harder and harder to get away from those things. But I do like stymieing the machine. There's no reason to give all of your personal information. Like, I don't know why anybody would ever give your real birthday to Facebook or to Twitter. It makes no sense to me. Why would you do that? I've got a fake birthday. Why? Because it's just something that they can tie together and say, okay, well, this really is this Doug Owen, and it would make it that much easier for people to, get a password to one of my bank accounts. I mean, you name it. So it's funny because I put in these fictitious birthdays, and I've got a few that I use, and people always, happy birthday, Doug. Happy birthday, man. Yeah. Thanks. I appreciate the sentiment. And maybe I'm just being paranoid, but yeah, I'm a fan of privacy, and even better than that, I'm a fan of screwing up all of their databases and putting inaccurate information. I am a proselytizer for doing that. I love to pump crap into their databases because basically that makes them irrelevant, unuseful, not handy. I mean, it's great to have a database of every gun owner in America if you're a tyrant, or if you're a foreign invader, or if you're Barack Obama. It's great because you can just go to those people's houses. But it's really bad if you have this list and you give it to the troops, the private mercenary contractors, whoever it may be, that is going door to door for whatever reason in this hypothetical situation. But it would be bad for them if those listings were wrong. That's one of the big things that I think that we really have on our side, and that is government incompetence and the inability for many things to happen on a grand scale in any kind of effective way. And the fact that most of the people that would be conducting any such, whatever it may be, but any such thing against the American people probably would be pretty incompetent. So that's why I don't worry about a lot of the aspects to what's happening in the conspiracy world, where everyone believes that it's just a matter of time before those blue helmets come and try to get your guns. We've never had more guns. Guns are all over this country, and, the government's just as well-armed. Jenna Napolitano this week said that the 1.6 billion bullets that they want, the new government request that they're trying to make secret, is just to get a good buy. And I'm a fan of quantity buying. Going to a guy told me this, he said, and he owned a convenience store. He said only poor people shop at convenience stores. And it's true. I mean, you go to a convenience store and you're going to see people that don't have cars, that are probably walking from apartment complexes. At least that's the kind of urban sprawl that I live in. And those people are buying, now a Coca-Cola, like a 24 ounce, $2.19. You better go for the fountain drink and keep it easy on the ice if you want to get a value buy. But you can go to Sam's and buy you a pallet of soda for next to nothing. So only the poor and only the people that are not prepared or don't have long-term strategies to save themselves money go there, and they just rape these people. You could say the same thing for most of the liquor stores in the hood and other payday loans and other predatory systems. But most people don't think that the convenience store down the road is a predatory lender. And it's not a lender, but it does charge you insanely high prices. So you have this inability for most people that just don't have a lot of foresight to really to put themselves in a better position, because they can't see the forest through the tree. They get caught in the matrix. And at the end of the day, there's nothing wrong with shopping at a convenience store, I guess, if you want to buy crap food, candies, high fructose corn syrup, alcohol, or cigarettes. So it's funny, when I stopped smoking cigarettes, and I still drink, but I go to a liquor store. I don't go to the convenience store to go buy Anheuser-Busch products. But full disclosure here, people. I am a fan of tequila. I am a fan of alcohol, but I don't buy it at the convenience store. But when I quit smoking cigarettes, I know, about 18 months or so ago. Oh, thank you. No, I realized, number one, it felt weird because I didn't have anything in my pockets. What do you have? You don't have a lighter. You don't have a cigarette pack. You don't have many of the things that you usually would tote with you to facilitate smoking. And there's nothing wrong if you smoke. I'm not bagging on people that smoke cigarettes. I would imagine that a large, maybe not a majority, but a large segment of the listener base smokes cigarettes. And there's nothing wrong with that. I believe that you have the right to smoke as many cigarettes as you want. I don't believe in the collective crap that we all have to be part of this, and you're hurting me because the government needs to take money from me and give it to you because of your bad lungs. We're missing the core problem here. But anyway, when I stopped smoking cigarettes and carrying things in my pocket, I found that I had almost no reason whatsoever to go to convenience stores. That was what I would do. I'd get up in the morning, and you try to buy the cartons, but they're so expensive. And by the time you smoke cigarettes for 18 years, where I was at, you don't want to buy a carton of cigarettes because you're always hoping that next week you're going to quit. I was like, I'm just buying one pack, man. I'm ready to get out of here. I hate this thing. I hate it now. My wife won't let me smoke in the house. I have to go outside. So you start thinking about all those reasons that, it kind of sucks. But, I actually enjoyed it for 18 years. But then I stopped enjoying it. Then I realized this is just a huge money suck. It's a huge sin tax that you're paying. And so didn't have to go to those stores anymore. But when you go back in every once in a while, like I'll be on a trip or to and fro and say, hey, let me stop and get a bottle of water or whatever. You realize you're like, wow, look at these prices. And maybe it's just because I'm getting old. But my dad, he always said, you don't want to shop at a convenience store. That's for people that are short-term thinkers. And, I didn't listen to him because that's where the video game machines were. It's where you could go stick your quarter in a machine and play Galaga or Time Soldiers or whatever it was that I was, into. And that's where I picked up a lot of bad habits, hanging out with people that hung out at the convenience store. So if you own a convenience store, Mr. Patel, I'm not bagging on you. I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with that. I'm just saying that that's kind of what we have. We just have a lot of these businesses and industries, including government, that just mark up things and really use the ignorance of, and maybe a little bit of stupidity of the poor, of the uninformed or ill-informed about whatever it may be. And that's why most of what you see, the insanity in this country today, is the way it is. So Obama gave a speech, and I really enjoy listening to Obama speak, only because people buy this, and it blows me away, some of the ridiculous logic or lack thereof that we hear coming out of the executive branch. And, oh, man, I mean, there's a lot of people that eat this crap up. So Let's just listen to Barack Obama. We're going to talk about gun control for a moment because there are things that are happening, not just with the Senate and politicians in the United States trying to put together this new framework for having a national database, a national system where you would integrate medical records and you would have this cohesion between the state and the medical industrial complex. But if you listen to Barack Obama, it sounds pretty compelling.
In the coming weeks, members of Congress will vote on whether we should require universal background checks for anyone who wants to buy a gun so that criminals or people with severe mental illnesses can't get their hands on one. They'll vote on tough new penalties for anyone who buys guns only to turn around and sell them to criminals. They'll vote on a measure that would keep weapons of war and high-capacity ammunition magazines that facilitate these mass killings off our streets. They'll get to vote on legislation that would help schools become safer and help people struggling with mental health problems to get the treatment that they need. None of these ideas should be controversial.
It's not controversial. Come on. Blacklisted Radio, that might be controversial. You hanging out with me in groups of 3 or more, that could be, scary to the government. That could be very, very controversial. But this, come on, getting people the help they deserve. Government's doing a great job at that. Just look at the job numbers this week that came out that everybody politicized and tried to figure out. Oh, so much punditry, so much brain power being used on such simple solutions. You can't have an economic recovery with unemployment at epic levels. 1979, 1976 levels, something like that. That was what was being hailed as the... Well, I think that we're just seeing the 40-year cycle play out, and it's really showing me how bad things were. It gives me hope because it shows me how bad things were when my parents had me back in 1977. I was born in 78, but they of course conceived me prior to that, and the world was pretty screwed up and crazy. And you know what? I realized how horrible the interest rates really were. My dad said that his very first interest rate in 1977 on his first mortgage was 26%. So now, they couldn't raise it to 3%. It would actually blow up these insolvent banks. But I'm sorry, I don't mean to step on Barack Obama here. He's talking about all the common sense, non-radical, non-controversial things that he's trying to accomplish. And if you just would get your mind around it, you stupid slaves, it would be a lot better.
Why wouldn't we want to make it more difficult for a dangerous person to get his or her hand on a gun? Why wouldn't we want to close the loophole that allows as many as...
They give dangerous people guns all the time. So many loopholes. Fast and Furious, not to mention all of the military members that come back and kill innocent people in this country and across the world. We have no problem. And these guys have deep psychological evaluations by government employees. And guess what? They're wrong often about this and about these people's sanity. Why do I say this? Because I read the news. I watch what's going on in the world. I have my finger on the pulse of what's happening in the war. There's another huge explosion. People dying every day in Iraq. And nobody talks about that because that is a U.S. Western Israeli success story, and it's called Iraq.
40% of all gun purchases to take place without a background check. Why wouldn't we?
That is not true. That is a lie. It's been debunked. Okay, a background check means that the government decides that you can have a firearm. Now, that doesn't mean that you're competent, and even if they have your psychological medical record and they know what drugs you're on, that doesn't mean that you are going to kill somebody, and it also doesn't mean that you're going to be not crazy and do a good job at protecting yourself and not using your gun to hurt others, and you're going to put it in a safe and keep it unloaded so that it doesn't ever hurt anyone. But this ridiculousness goes on.
Do that.
Nobody gut checks them.
And if you ask most Americans outside of Washington, including many gun owners, some of these ideas, they don't consider them controversial.
I don't think it's controversial, Barack Obama. Why? Because there's not a controversy. The federal government doesn't need to know if I give my son a firearm. Now, that takes a little bit of responsibility on my part to be able to say, you know what, my son's not insane and crazy. But that doesn't mean that I would be right either. But my father gave me 22 rifle when I was quite young, and lo and behold, I didn't shoot anyone. I haven't shot anyone with that gun. And better yet, I have a great appreciation and respect for the power that it holds because, well, you've seen it for yourself. It's not just some video game. It's not some third-party experience that you are involved in because you're watching TV or something else that's simulated. You see the hole go through the piece of wood when you're shooting with your BB gun or with your 22 rifle. But nonetheless, the government doesn't need to know when you give your 12-year-old gun. And I'm sure that if you told the government that you were going to be giving your 12-year-old a gun, they would be appalled and they would probably raid your house. I'm just guessing. That's my conjecture, but I wouldn't. If you know, I've seen so many of these stories where somebody puts their picture of them with a gun on Facebook, and next thing you know, they have their profile yanked, and they're talking to the government. The government may be going to your school to talk to your child about the picture, and usually it's a year or two later, and they come back and they finally decide to do some kind of investigation. I mean, it's so asinine. But, you know, I think that these numbers are also complete lies. 90% of the people do not agree. 90% of the people do not. I mean, if you saw this conspiracy article that came out this week talking about all the different government conspiracies or conspiracy theories, rather, that people subscribe to, that most people, 1 in 4, think that Barack Obama's Satan. So I don't think that 90% of people think that under the Obama administration or just the federal government in general, Congress, the Senate, or any aspect of government is doing that well or would do that well. I mean, we have all-time lows across the board for public perception of government. So the perception that the administration and the current regime is constitutionally bound and working in our interest, it's just not there. It's not there. But, you know, he knows this.
Right now, 90% of Americans, 90%, support background checks that will keep criminals and people who have been found to be a danger to themselves or others from buying a gun.
It's not going to keep anybody that's dangerous, a criminal, from buying a gun. It might change the price structure for buying a gun. It might make it more expensive for criminals to buy guns. It might make them more valuable. But the government just talking about gun control makes those gun prices go up. It makes people create scarcity. They create a run on the gun. And that's what we had over the last at least 6 months. And really, it's been happening since Barack Obama was elected. Prices on AR-15 shot through the roof, and they were at all-time lows right before Sandy Hook.
More than 80% of Republicans agree.
No, I'm not a Republican. I don't agree. 80% of Republicans do not agree.
80% of gun owners agree.
80% of gun owners do not agree. Were you asked if you agree out there? If you're a listener and a gun owner, were you asked? No.
Think about that.
I am thinking.
How often do 90% of Americans agree on anything? It never happens. Many other reforms are supported by clear majorities of Americans.
No.
I ask every American to find out where your member of Congress stands on these ideas. If you're not part of that 90% who agree that we should make it harder for a criminal or somebody with a severe mental illness to buy a gun, then you should ask them, why not? I read an article in the news just the other day wondering, has Washington missed its opportunity because as time goes on, after Newtown, somehow people start moving on and forgetting. Let me tell you, the people here, they don't forget.
No way. The media keeps
Grace's
reminding
dad's
them.
not forgetting.
No, not that guy.
Adia's mom's hasn't forgotten. The notion that 2 months or 3 months after something as horrific as what happened in Newtown happens.
That's right. You got to keep reminding the people out there that you need government to keep you safe from bad people like Adam Lanza.
And we've moved on to other things.
That's right. We've moved on. We're past the psychological mind up. People just don't care. They're wrapped back up in their own tragedies. And most of it's economic in people's personal lives.
That's not who we are. Less than 100 days ago that happened. And the entire country was shocked. And the entire country pledged we would do something about it.
That's right. See, he's just like Glenn Beck, okay? You know, it's like the 9/12 initiative, getting people to remember the pain of that incident. With Glenn Beck, he sells the idea that, you know, he's a libertarian, number one, which I don't think is true. But number two, that we need to refill that pain, that passion, that patriotism that only comes out of the bloodshed of innocence. And he's not going to say that because people would be appalled. That's why I'm saying it for Barack Obama.
This time would be different. Shame on us if we forgot. Right now, members of Congress are back home in their districts. And many of them are holding events where they can hear from their constituents. So I want everybody who's listening to make yourself heard right now. If you think that checking someone's criminal record before you can check out a gun show is common sense, you've got to make yourself heard.
Before you can go to the gun show, you can't even look at the guns. Should I have to give a background search before I actually watch a YouTube video with guns on it?
If you're a responsible, law-abiding gun owner who wants to keep irresponsible, law-breaking individuals from abusing the right to bear arms by inflicting harm on a massive scale, speak up. We need your voices in this debate.
All right. I want to put my voice in the debate, Barack Obama, and I'm excited about this, okay? You've got a buddy, and his name's Eric Holder. Now, he and the BATFE, which is the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, they've given a lot of bad people that we know are drug lords, criminals, mass murderers, extortionists. I could just come up with all these different adjectives to describe the people that you gave guns to. Lots of them. And you should atone for the 30,000 plus deaths that were, well, number one, the drug policies that we continue to use to destabilize our southern neighbors is appalling. But the fact that we continue to finance and arm these militants is nothing less than disgusting. It's really, really hard for me to take any of this seriously, and I don't know who does, because I can give you so many examples of cops, people that government has vetted to be safety certified and good to go, that use their power, their authority to hurt and kill and rape and steal and, I mean, on and on and on. Now, that's the police, okay? And the FBI, I mean, his own Secret Service. Let's just, let's look around your own home before we start trying to fix America. In your own circle of people around you, Barack Obama, you have, well, ne'er-do-wells, having sex with hookers, hanging out. And, I mean, not even the fact that I care about prostitution, and I think that is just kind of a huge security lapse, because you could extort these people. You could blackmail these people into just about anything. But that you would be unknowing, oblivious to the fact that this is what your own Secret Service is doing. Okay, you don't know what's going on in the Justice Department. Can we talk about all of the weapons that are being exported from this country to the tune of hundreds of billions of dollars over the decade in just military sales to countries throughout the Middle East? No, absolutely no way to account for them. And most of these weapons and weapons manufacturers are profiting from weapons that are being used against our own troops. I mean, come on. Come on, really? Me getting a background check, yeah, you might keep me because Doug Owen has said some pretty crazy things on the internet, and the government keeps tabs on Doug Owen, or maybe you out there might have issues. But if I'm a drug dealer, a criminal, a murderer, you're not going to have a problem getting guns. Just like you're not going to have a problem going into a prison and finding heroin. And it's not the other prison inmates that are there that will be, well, I mean, obviously they facilitate it, but it's usually the guards that bring in the drugs. So we can't keep drugs. We can't keep drugs out of prisons. We can't keep violence out of prisons. And that's as controlling as you can really get. I mean, it doesn't go beyond that. And if you can't control drugs in prisons, you're not going to be able to control weapons out here. And actually, I'm pretty upset because this isn't the one clip that I wanted. Actually, are these the same? Let me see. Because there's one where he's talking about, well, you have to trust the government. The government is us. Maybe he says it right here. Maybe I should let him finish it out. He said, there's a lot of people out here saying that
law-breaking individuals from abusing the right to bear arms by inflicting harm on a massive scale. Speak up. We need your voices in this
here,
debate.
Barack Obama. I'm here.
We need everybody to remember how we felt 100 days ago.
Feel that pain. Anyway, he's going on and he says, well, I'm the government and I'm elected. I'm constrained by the Constitution. Okay, I can only. Oh, actually, I might have this audio clip. Did I record this? That would be awesome if I did. No, I didn't. But anyway, he takes forever to say these things because he's using NLP and other neuro-linguistic programming techniques to get people to remember the pain, to relive the tragedy over and over. Now, there's so many tragedies that are government created. They don't want you to remember those and to relive those tragedies over and over because it runs contrary to the agenda. So that's really all I have to say about Barack Obama's push. Oh, no, we don't want to open this. No. Close that. Oops. I've had some problems with this freaking browser. Firefox is destroying my audio system here for whatever reason. I just so used to opening it. Oh man. Let's see if we don't break the machine here. I knew it would be Firefox. Let me see. Task Manager. We're going to shut this thing down. Come here. See, it's one of the sad things about, or bad things about doing the show like this too, is that sometimes, you don't have the break to give you the buffer there to do things that you want to do. All right, so hopefully this hasn't created a big audio loop for the people out there. Joe Friday in the chat room, James and others. You can join them at blacklistedradio.com. There is an interactive chat room there for all. And so we've been talking about Barack Obama, gun control. Dianne Feinstein has realized that the argument is bankrupt and people are not falling for it. But we do have the UN Arms Treaty. Now, what Dianne Feinstein is trying to do, she's actually moved to video games and to regulating other content. And you even have some of the blowhards like Donald Trump that are in agreement that we need to regulate video games. We need to regulate movies. We need to create a ministry of truth to ostensibly make people nicer. And it blows me away. So this is the UN Arms Treaty, which is trying to accomplish the same thing. Now, many proponents of it are saying this is the way that we're going to be able to control the weapons of the world and that we're going to be able to do the same thing that the federal government and the ATF want to do, and that is curtail weapons going to the wrong people. Now, we know that our weapons are going to... This story is no longer available on the site. Come on, Washington Times. It's no good. But the UN treaty here, see, that's why I usually end up just copying and pasting this stuff to my own website. But I just figured I would leave this in my show notes. But nonetheless, the idea that the UN gun treaty is going to be used to keep weapons out of the wrong people's hands is silly. It's just silly. But it does create a national registry. So a lot of people are really worried. Second Amendment advocates are worried about the fact that the United Nations would actually have lists of American gun owners. Now, I think it's also kind of a misnomer because you can go to blogs. There's been several of them. You can go to a website and find most of the legal gun-owning registered gun owners in most states, Connecticut, New York, to name two. And there were big, huge hoorahs about the leaking of these names, which are publicly available. So it wasn't really a leak, but just putting these public names on the internet and actually putting them all together in one handy graphic, one Google map, so that people could go and rob these homes. And that's what happened. That probably wasn't the original intent. I will give the bloggers, or writers rather, the benefit of the doubt. But so this information is already there. The United Nations could be collecting it. They could hire a private contractor like Stratfor or other think tanks, data aggregators, to give them this information if they really wanted it. So obviously it has nothing to do with that. Now, the bad guys, okay, North Korea, Iran, and Syria all have voted against the UN treaty. The gun treaty itself, I think, is a fine example of international weapon dealings, and they usually have drugs involved with these deals as well. I mean, if you look at Afghanistan, you have to take note that each and every year they're having bigger bumper crops of opium, and that's not a mistake. And just about anywhere that the United States has franchised our freedom initiatives to, they have more poppy. Look at Iraq. Okay, they didn't have heroin growers or poppy growers. Now they do. So it's kind of it's definitely getting larger, the amount of production. So is it just a coincidence, just a grand conspiracy theory that everywhere the West seems to put a foothold militarily, the production of poppy starts exploding? No, it's not a conspiracy theory. It's just a business plan. Nemo DeNovo, a friend of mine, says that often, but it really is. It's a way to stabilize economies, and you have economies like the Golden Triangle that was created by the CIA to use heroin to build that base, to build that economy for these nations that were U.S. friendly. So if you have to build it with drugs, whatever, we're going to make it happen. So the UN gun treaty, I've read through it. I'm sure some of you out there are pretty up on what it does. John Kerry's been pushing this thing. Let me see. I have the breakdown on this. But the Black Agenda report really had the other side of the story, and that is why this is a bad idea. Not because the UN or the blue helmets will be coming for your guns. They are already probably pretty pressed to do other things. They're worried about Africa rather than coming to the United States and trying to take your weapons from you. Not that we shouldn't be vigilant about gun rights, because if you're not out there really letting people know how ridiculous this debate is, they're going to be coaxed by the NRA into this. And they keep using the term common sense. It's a common sense approach. It's just common sense. We want it. Common Sense was written by Thomas Paine. And Common Sense was a book to get people on board with the revolution that was written to really articulate in a simple way to the plebeians, the simpletons, the farmers, what the revolution was all about. Great book, by the way. Or great. It was actually kind of a little. It's not a poem. I mean, it was just kind of a short story. There's probably a technical term for it. There's probably a literary term for what it was, but it's just a short book. I think it's a must read. It's really good, but that term itself, common sense, really does speak to this idea that it's for the simpletons. It's common sense, people. You can wrap your mind around the logic here. So the UN gun treaty seems like it's very invasive, and that it might give the United Nations control over the United States of America and our own gun laws. And really, if they push that forward, I think it would actually be kind of advantageous to most of the liberty lovers, because it would create this huge political vacuum for nullification. And it already is. Montana, Texas, sheriffs across the nation are saying, no, we're not going to enforce these unconstitutional, in their interpretation, laws, international laws. Black Agenda Report has this piece here, and I'll just read from it. U.S. human rights wars, arms control as a weapon. The United Nations General Assembly could vote on regulation of the international arms trade. Purports to be a modest step away from violence in the world, but is in fact the very opposite. Imagine that. The newly approved arms treaty is conceived and designed as a facilitator of war by its main sponsor, the United States of America. So this isn't, and this is how it's being portrayed by Fox News and by the Glenn Becks and the right-wing conspiracy media, if you will. There's plenty of that as a UN initiative. But the United States itself actually created this. John Kerry and the lawyers and of course the military-industrial complex really created this piece of framework. And each and every year there's different variations. People are always appalled by it, and so they focus group it and they bring it back for the people to look at and to think about over and over again. At the core of the treaty is a ban on arms exports to countries that are under UN embargoes or that are accused of promoting genocide, crimes against humanity, and war crimes. But such language is only a tool of war in the hands of the United States. The cold fact is that since the establishment of the United Nations, to this very day, the United States and its allies, clients, and proxies have been the worst perpetrator of crimes against humanity. If there's a genocide, there's a IT Farben, there's a guy there that's selling weapons, the Lord of War. And let's be honest, it's the United States and Israel, the Western powers, the Brits. We know about colonization. We know about apartheid. And that's usually what is sold. Tell me all of the altruistic, nice things that we have done recently, and I would, I think I could probably argue that these things are just, paper tigers. Anyway, in the 21st century, in a cruel joke on humanity, the mass murderers in Washington put on their human rights hats and declared themselves to be the international community's protectors against so-called rogue nations. That's right. We got to go out there and get those Syrians. They're killing people. They're killing people indiscriminately. Let's forget about all of the facilitators of torture, rape, and human rights violations that give to the Clinton Global Initiative. Let's forget about all of those people that are armed, funded, and use mercenary contractors like Blackwater to protect their own despotic regimes. Jordan, King of Jordan, anybody? I can give you a lot of other examples of Middle Eastern autocrats that are Western-backed and sponsored, and we sell weapons to them. Saudi Arabians, not nice people. The Sauds have a really, really screwed up justice system, and they are on blast. They have a case where this guy ended up paralyzing another man, and so they are going to chemically paralyze him. It kind of highlights you have to have people there that don't mind torturing others, that kind of have that whole mentality, an eye for an eye. And to not go off on a tangent here, I kind of understand that thought pattern, an eye for an eye. But if we're just poking at each other's eyes, let's be honest. Really, you're just creating more blind people. We're creating more paralyzed people that are going to be at the behest of others that will have to support them. They become a burden on their family. So it's not just punishing a person, it's punishing a whole community, a town, a family. Really crazy stuff. But that just shows you this hypocrisy, as well as the bankrupt moral arguments that come from the United Nations, that are coming from John Kerry and his predecessor, of course, Hillary Clinton. No different. But it's just ridiculous. It's so silly to think that, oh yeah, we're the good guy. And I'm not one of these America bashers, Russia's the good guys. Let's all hop on the Putin train because he's a man of the people, or the Hugo Chavez communist train because he's a good guy. These guys are cult of personalities, and I'm not a big fan of the political philosophies and what they've actually been able to accomplish. I mean, everybody talks a good game, but it's few and far between where you can find examples of these guys doing wonderful things for humanity. And I'm not an anti-Putin guy either. I just think that at the end of the day, when you have things like blasphemy laws and you're not able to actually talk about religion, you can't have these kind of adult discussions. When you have to have the government tell you that you're too fat and they want to exercise you, but at the same time, in an ironic, silly world where they actually empower and give corporations like McDonald's exemptions from the healthcare laws. I mean, it's just like, why? Why do you buy this over and over again? Come on, people. So Black Agenda Report breaks this down. We'll just wrap it up here. The Democratic Republic of Congo has lost 6 million people at the hands of the U.S. humanitarian policy. That's right. And we've given now we have an international war crime tribunal that is going after Joseph Kony. He's now one of America's #1 wanted people. But that's a whole nother side issue. But, I mean, you just look at this umbrella of humanitarian aid and how it has been used to facilitate war crimes and genocide. So we have a very, 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 very bad track record. Okay, go back to Liberia, in Monrovia, in the creation of a new constitutional republic in South Africa. How did that work out? Enslavement, mass chaos, death, and today, one of the craziest, most awesomely horrible places on earth, hell on earth. Okay, you have cross-dressing transvestite warlords that are, killing people, fighting in battle naked alongside their child warriors. I mean, it doesn't get any crazier than that. Can you blame the United States? Do we blame the apathetic Americans, the people of Walmart, for that? I don't. But at the same time, I don't try to, church it up and make it seem like we're just these great, wonderful people that are just doing these wonderful things that are helping all of the world with all of their horrible problems. I mean, it goes on and on and on. And it is control, because they're not going to be giving these weapons to people that are good and altruistic. They're going to give them to others out there. All right, so let's talk. That's enough about gun control, I think. Other than the fact, and I did want to mention this, and that is Feinstein is just an authoritarian, and she's really showing her true colors. And I think this helps bankrupt these arguments and her solutions even more. But this came out of guns.com yesterday. Feinstein now talking video game control in the wake of the assault weapons ban that has so far been blocked by other legislators. Dianne Feinstein is now talking about video game control. That's right. Not just the controllers, but controlling the content. Speaking to an audience of about 500 commies, I would add, in San Francisco. Ding, ding, the treat. of California. Quote, if Sandy Hook doesn't do it, then maybe we have to proceed, but that is in the future and a very negative role for young people, and the industry ought to take note of that. So it's about her agenda, it's about what they're accomplishing, and it's about exploiting the tragedy of Sandy Hook. And I know many of you out there, including myself, have more and more questions about how real this actual incident was. And I do believe it's synthetic, and I do believe that the government has done everything it can to position itself to be in just a shamelessly opportunistic position. And it hasn't worked. Having the children from Sandy Hook crying behind Barack Obama as he signs executive orders, that hasn't convinced the American people. And I think that they're truly frustrated. You know, Dianne Feinstein, she's like, what do we have to do? How much propaganda do we have to create for this to go through, for the American people, the stupid slaves, to get on board with this? What do we have to do? What do we have to do? You have Colorado Governor John Hickenlooper. He said he's on the same page. Quote, there might well be some direct connection between people who have some mental instability, and when they go over the edge, they transport themselves. They become one of those video games. Perhaps that's why all these assault weapons are used. How about putting yourself, let's look at war and violence and being able to put yourself in the zone, the murder zone, the killer zone. It happened far before video games. Do video games make it easier and facilitate death? I absolutely believe they do. It does have a numbing effect. It does have a psychological effect. Some of the science and pseudoscience that has come to light does show that people do have a desensitizing effect by playing these games on themselves. And so if you actually look at the math, it doesn't make any sense, and it doesn't actually, it proves actually the contrary. If you look at crime victims per 1,000 citizens, there's this breakdown from 1993 all the way to 2004, and it shows each and every year it goes down. Okay, Grand Theft Auto, Doom starting out being really the first-person shooter, or maybe Wolfenstein. First game I played that was a first-person shooter. You weren't shooting other human... Well, actually, you were shooting Nazis in Wolfenstein. Doom, shooting fireball-throwing aliens and other aspects. You got Doom, you got Postal, you had, State of Emergency, Grand Theft Auto, 1, 2, 3, wherever they're at now. You have Postal. So there's plenty of video games that have come out, but actual gun crime, gun violence continues to go down. It absolutely does when you look at the breakdown on gun crime. And I know that I'm kind of beating the dead horse here because most people that listen to the show are going to be liberty activists. They're going to be fans of the Second Amendment and the Constitution in general. And I think most of us agree that if you don't like what's going on now, we have a total disregard for the Constitution, the letter of the law, for anything that's right and humane. So maybe we should go to the Constitution. And debatably, we haven't really used the Constitution since the Whiskey Rebellion. George Washington kind of sidestepped Congress, but Abraham Lincoln, he wrote so many executive orders and basically just basically nullified half of Congress and the Senate during the Civil War. And all the southern states were not represented. And debatably, the Congress has been not in session, at rest, since the Civil War, if you get into all of the technicalities. But, then again, I don't believe that we should just say, everything that we've done in the last 200 years has been wrong. Let's just try to rip this whole thing apart. Because I think that that's unrealistic. It's not pragmatic. It's not going to happen. So it's like... a lot of things, the Khalifa, having a world controlled by Islamic law. It's not going to happen. It's just not going to work. You're not going to have a nation of white people anywhere, anytime soon. Maybe a town. There's one in Texas called Vidor, but for the most part, you're not going to to ever see those kind of things happen again. Not because they're not okay ideas, and I'm not saying white supremacy or any of those things are okay ideas. They're just There's just as bankrupt as government in most regards, and it's the romanticizing about how the world was better when we were ignorant, rather than looking at what's really plaguing society. I think there's a lot of misdirection in that whole realm and that bankrupt argument, but people still pull it out. I see a lot of it. And the sad reality is that because the government's doing such a horrible job regulating the people of this country and the laws, people start looking for crazy extreme solutions societally to government and its bankrupt policies. So video game control, you even have idiots like Mr. It's not Warren Buffett, Donald Trump, chiming in on this discussion, and I don't know why anybody cares about him, but people do. He's got a platform. He's got a show. He's on TV, and that's why he becomes relevant. Donald Trump's chimed in on it. Video game violence and glorification must be stopped. It is creating monsters. I like how they use this word monsters over and over again. We have to stop these monsters. Who are these monsters? Adam Lanza? Yeah, absolutely a monster. He was a creation of psychotropic drugs, the drugs that he was on. I remember it's something fan. It's not tryptophan. It might be tryptophan. I could Google it. But anyway, that they admitted to him being on these psychotropic drugs. And the side effects are there. The side effects say that they create violent delusions. They create hallucinations. And so it's the big bull in the china shop. It's the elephant in the room that no one really wants to talk about, and that is the well-known fact that there are just so many diagnoses of the people that really do have things like Asperger's and other true issues, and they put them on these very volatile drugs. Not to say that some people don't need them. I'm not a doctor. I'm not a brain surgeon. I don't know what people need, individuals, and what's the best way forward. And I have seen horribly mentally disturbed people that probably do need drugs, but no one wants to make that part of the discussion. And that shows you that it's not designed or being used as a way to create a solution, but just a way to create more and more problems. So what are you going to do? Take the violence out of video games because kids play video games? Well, then kids just stop playing video games because it doesn't interest them, or they play other video games that are maybe less violent. I mean, but you look at some of the ridiculousness of it, and you have drones. Okay, isn't that killing people easily, creating people that are desensitized to murdering others since we're not in a declared war? I mean, I can make that argument, and I do make that argument. I mean, that's video game deaths, and they glorify it, and they give them special ribbons and pins for killing people, okay, and assassinating people. And I try to really, really be balanced and put myself in multiple perspectives before I cast judgment on things like drones, because I can understand where you would have somebody who's extremely dangerous that would be in a position to cause harm to millions of Americans. Maybe that crazy, ridiculous scenario could happen, but far be it from government to actually target and get that guy right. And here's a perfect example. We have James Holmes. Okay, James Holmes. Nobody wants to talk about this. James Holmes, the guy, the Aurora shooter, has pretty much now been exposed as a guy that was completely out of his mind. Everyone knew it. The police had been warned. The college had been warned. Everyone knew that he was bat-ass crazy, and nobody did anything about it. No one. Nobody said, hey, we should talk to this guy. Nothing. And I mean, maybe a little bit, but not enough to stop the guy. So even when the government has all of the info, all of the intel, they have all of the signs, they've been informed and ratted on by by people. People have tipped the government using the see something, say something model. I saw something, and it's a crazy dude. I think he wants to kill a bunch of people, and his house is filled with alcohol and bombs and guns. We're all right. We're not going to go over there and check on it. Now, all you'd have to do is basically say, I think I smelled marijuana coming out of his dorm room. Oh, they would have busted the shit out of this guy. I mean, they would have come in there and taken everything that he had, and they would probably locked him away and put him in a mental ward, and it would have been really, really clean and tidy. You start telling people, well, he's crazy. Oh, there's nothing we can do for that. Can't do anything about the... Same thing with Muttalib, the CIA asset. If you didn't hear about that, The Guardian came out with that this week. And that's not even being discussed. And that is that he was working with the CIA. So the crotch bomber, the whole justification for the multi-million-dollar contracts that people like Michael Chertoff enjoyed making profit from, and the mainstream media complicitly sat there and propagandized and feared the people into letting the TSA touch them. All of that was predicated upon a CIA asset, Muttalib, a guy that had his father had ratted on him, had snitched on him to the CIA. So if the CIA, the Central Intelligence Agency, there is such a creature, if they know that you're a danger and that you are potentially radicalized and that you're Al-Qaeda, and even your father, who is an ambassador, says this, we're not going to do anything. We're going to go ahead and put him on the plane. We'll put him on the plane with the bomb. And they went as far to let this guy go ahead and try to kill himself. I think that they did want to blow up the plane, but strangely enough, or maybe not, because the weapon that he had, the crotch bomb, did little more than burn his genitals. And conveniently, everyone's sitting around recording this. There's several passengers watching all of this happen, recording this and putting it out. Not that you got to see it. You have Kurt Haskell, which he's an interesting character. I don't know really what to think of him, but because he was already into the alternative media, he already knew about 9/11 being an inside job and he already subscribed to some of those ideologies, and so it's just a hell of a coinky dink that he just happens to be here and see this, and he saw the guys, the CIA, put Muttalib on the plane without a passport, without being subjected to the same type of scrutiny that any other passenger would have. But he just conveniently saw this and was able to tell his story. So either they wanted the story to get out, which would make sense. You'd want this to get out. You would want people to think that this is the grand CIA plan or plot, which you would only have to imagine that was the plan. Otherwise, they would have killed him. They would have killed all those passengers. And actually, they made them all get out of the warehouse. And oddly enough, when they were being interviewed, some of the people there, I think, were potentially going to be whacked at the warehouse there. Looking at the story, it's really interesting. All of the witnesses where they were interrogated about what had happened on the plane. I guess that everything went to plan. Maybe didn't, and it's become this huge justification for basically locking down the United States, creating the Department of Homeland Security's multi-billion-dollar budget expansions, all of that predicated on one guy. His name was Muttalib, and he was working for who? Not Al-Qaeda, although he did like Al-Qaeda, and he was going to some of their Bible study classes, wink, wink. So who allows you to go fly over and hang out with Al-Qaeda all day long, and then you get facilitated back onto a plane where you get to try to blow up your balls? Well, the CIA. So it seems like a no-brainer, but that story completely absent from any mainstream media coverage. So let's talk about the medical industrial complex a little bit more. I see that we're flying through here. 11:13. This is the question. How much talking would I want to do in a 2-hour format without any commercials? How many clips and other things would I need to play to kind of get me, the coffee that I need to keep the show going for 2 hours? And I'm really feeling like this is not that bad. Really excited about this because I haven't even touched on 1/10 of the things that I want to get to. So this is good. This is very good. Deadly new bird flu virus in China, possibly linked to dead pigs. It has made the leap to human beings, allegedly. A new and deadly strain of bird flu is threatening 2 eastern Chinese provinces, with health authorities and virologists suspecting that the virus mutation is the link between the dead pigs that floated past Shanghai, dead migratory birds in North China, and the deaths of 3 people. 2 new cases of H7N9 bird flu, one of them fatal, have been reported in East China's Zhejiang province, but bringing the total number of infections in the country to 9, according to a report by Chinese regime's state media, Xinhua. Now, the thing I wonder about is, how are they quantifying or defining this as bird flu? We saw with the first bird flu pandemic scare, the state and the World Health Organization and other syndicates, other affiliates, they were actually just using symptoms as a way to determine whether they had the H1N1. So this is H7N9. How are they doing this? It's just symptoms. And when you look at China, they have so many environmental contaminants. They live in a toxic formaldehyde soup, if you will. It's appalling. I mean, that's why people always have their SARS masks on, and it's really, I think, corporate fascism run awry. And the people of China are suffering in a lot of ways. So you only have 2 of these incidences that have happened. One of these people died. I mean, what other contributing things did they have? Other contributing factors, other health-related illnesses, or just weakened immune systems by environmental contamination? None of those things are discussed. But what we take away from this is that the H7N9 flu is coming, people, and it could be coming near you. And guess what? They already have the vaccine. They're already working on it. I think it's Pfizer that will be getting these new contracts. Let me see here. I had this. The Hong Kong newspaper, When We Po, reported Shanghai authorities have failed to report 5 previous severe cases of pneumonia caused by unidentified pathogens. So whenever they have some kind of virus, they're supposed to be reporting this. But, the Chinese media is not, the Chinese government is not very transparent. Once influenza adapts to pig cells, it is often possible for the virus to take human transmissible form. That's precisely what happened in 2009, according to this report, with the H1N1 swine flu. It was the whole story, depending on how well you followed it, really determines on what you believe, which narrative you followed. Did it come from a pig farm in Mexico? Was this something that came from other regions in South America? Was this an infection that came from Asia? It just depends on who you ask. How many people are affected? 50 to 100,000. How many people died? We don't know. We don't know. So they just put all these very scary numbers together so that you have this immediate want for what? The solution. You're scared, right? You're seeing these massive kill-offs of animals, birds, pigs. In the United States, I mean, we've had huge aquatic die-offs where you had, shrimp. I'm trying to think of other aquatic shellfish, just massive die-offs. Many of them think it's linked to Corexit, I would as well, or other chemical dispersants, oil dispersants, and things of the like. But there's a huge mass kill-off of birds. Recently, I think it was in Ecuador, somewhere along the South American coast. I mean, there's just so many of these stories that you can keep up with. A couple years back, there's birds dying in Arkansas. Just people speculating from energy weapons to bird flu. But there's one, and I don't know what really it is, to be honest. I have no idea. But I do know that the government lies. The Chinese government lies more. And their solution that they're selling you is the vaccine. That, you read the... Let's not read the insert and see how little of this actually affects the people out there. Now, if you're paranoid and you don't want to go get your government vaccine, you might be a wacko. You might be crazy. And this MSNBC host, Melissa Harris Perry, kind of breaks down this new meme. And that is, you don't get to decide what's best for your children. And I'm going to speak to this, but this is what they're pushing. This is a little what is this? It's a little trailer they've been playing over and over again for this show. And mind you, MSNBC, not the most highly rated news media organization. They don't have great ratings. I mean, as far as network news, still behind the dying numbers at CNN and Fox and others. But it is the GE Military Industrial Complex's favorite liberal, somewhat liberal station. Anyway, this whole idea that the government and people collectively need to be involved in your child's life, though maybe somewhat true and well-intentioned, still kind of creepy here. So I'm going to let you make your own determination. I've got thoughts on it. Let's see. Here we go.
We have never invested as much in public education as we should have because we've always had kind of a private notion of children. Your kid is yours and totally your responsibility. We haven't had a very collective notion of these are our children. So part of it is we have to break through our kind of private idea that kids belong to their parents or...
And I agree with this to a certain extent. Kids don't belong to your parents. Our parents, your legal custodian, are they legally liable for you till you're 18 years old? Sure. Do they take a huge amount of responsibility for you and your education and your development? Yeah. And when it comes to who owns a child, I don't like that idea. I mean, I don't think anybody owns another human being until they're a certain age. But I do think that you're legally culpable for what they do. And we've decided that, at least in Texas, age 17 is the age that you can absolve yourself from that responsibility. But, this idea that it's the parents' complete responsibility and that others don't have a right or a say in education, I think is somewhat naive because the kids are the future for this country, humanity in general, for a better world tomorrow. Sorry, Stevie Wonder, don't mean to steal your thunder there, but it is true. So what she's saying here is true, but what is the solution? And that's where you find the poison pill. That's where you find the guy dumping sodium fluoride into the well. So let's back her up here a little bit. I stepped on it. It's real quick.
Our children. So part of it is we have to break through our kind of private idea that kids belong to their parents or kids belong to their families and recognize that kids belong to whole communities. Once it's everybody's responsibility and not just the households, then we start making better investments.
Now, see, this says lean forward, better investments. Now, there's no shortage of capital investments we put into children's educations, and you can't blame it all on the federal government. Texas is a fine example of where there's more interest and effort put into getting kids onto the football field than getting them into national debate clubs or into science and math. And I think that they have made strides to make it cooler to be a geek and not nearly as cool to be a jock, but societally it's still much cooler and sexually advantageous for you to be the quarterback rather than the head of the chess team. Though, being good at chess might get you farther in life than, throwing a football because let's be honest, there's only 34 teams in the National Football League. The chance that you are the starting quarterback or even one of the few privileged that can be backup quarterbacks, very limited. The chance that you can be a genius and make yourself very wealthy in this country or somewhere else in the world? Very high. I mean, it's not that hard. It's a lot harder to become the quarterback. So we put more focus on that aspect of what's cool and what's not cool. And I think that the government getting involved in trying to teach the kids what's cool and what's not cool is not going to work. You know, my dad trying to use things in the 80s like being, hip, or what he thought was hip, by saying, radical, man, radical, Doug. That just did not work. Did not set a tone where I thought that we were on some even playing field. So the community, the idea that the community is obligated. Well, what's the community? The community expands. Is it the national community? Is it the global community? Are they all responsible for the child? Do we as taxpayers, people that don't have children, should we be just as invested in a child's education and where they go in life as their parents? Absolutely not. Doesn't make any sense. When you start getting outside of groups of more than 100 human beings, you stop having investment. It's not, you can blame going to work all day long, but my third removed cousins, I don't talk to them. Do you talk to your cousins, your third cousins, your fourth cousins? Do you talk to people that are way, 1,000 miles from you, and even though they're in your gene pool, in your family? You might if you're Hispanic, or maybe, but mostly, and this might sound racist, but I think it's somewhat true. Most Anglos would not do that. I'm not even that close with my cousins, whereas my wife, who is Hispanic, very close with her cousins, stays in contact, but still not that invested in their children's upbringing. And it's not that, I wouldn't like to spend more time, but we live in a rat race. We live in a world where we have to make Federal Reserve notes to keep a roof over our head. And as long as you have people that are more worried about, trying to pay their taxes, keep a roof over their head, and feed these children, you're not going to have that kind of investment. So do parents have the responsibility and the right? That's what it really comes down to decide what's best for their children. I think that they do until they're 17 years old. And there's no shortage of people, because of the economic melees that we have in the United States of America, that send their kids to public school that's government funded, and it's a community, and pushing communal or communitarian ideas, global initiatives into their minds. Curtailing just about everything from gun ownership to your right to free speech. Go to any school in this country, you're going to find ADL propaganda all over the place. No place for hate. Erase the R word. Can't say retard anymore because it offends people. And it's just a technical term. That's all it is. It's a term that means dampen. Should you use that for people? No, it's not a great term for dampen. But are people so offended by dim-witted or dipshit? No, you can say dipshit all day long. It's no big deal. Say retard. Oh my God, you've stepped off the cliff of political incorrectness. So all of these feel-good bullcrap initiatives, and that's what they are just ways to give you, I think, less responsibility, and that's become the problem. It's not that people are too responsible for their children, are they? No. It's not that DJ B2 says the ADL is just retarded. And I agree with that sentiment. They are. They want to dampen your free speech. They want to bring that back. They don't want you having the ability to determine what you believe is right. Oh, no. You're hurting people. It's a community issue. So the proof's in the pudding. All these community pushing products or agendas on these kids doesn't seem to help out all that much, and it certainly hasn't changed the way that we look at the world and the global community. It just hasn't. And the problem is not that people think too much of their own children responsibly. I don't think that most parents take much responsibility for their children, and I give that to the state taking away your responsibilities, or offering very gingerly to take care of your responsibilities for you. And that transcends to so many other aspects of it, of these larger issues. So money does make the world go round. I am not one of the people that likes to just keep harping on money and the economic melees or quagmire that we are in, but I mean, it's so sad. And I don't know if this is hubris or just bad policy, or if they just believe the people in government that you won't notice. Okay, so here's a hoodwinking in Canada. Goldman partnered to be the next U.S. ambassador to Canada. With the departure of Goldman's Mark Carney from the Bank of Canada, some were concerned, actually concerned may not be the right word here, delighted may be better, that the northern country is finally free of the tentacles emanating from the 200 West block. Not so fast, as it turns out. Goldman's ambitions via the resource-rich northern country are strong, quite strong, as a Globe and Mail reports. Bruce Heyman, Chicago-based Goldman Sachs executive, and one of Barack Obama's top fundraisers, is in the final talks to become the next U.S. ambassador to Canada. So, I mean, come on. John Corzine, fundraiser. Goldman Sachs, fundraiser. Now, these are real problems. These are real societal issues when we have this. We have government working for the debt creators. We have the government borrowing money from private entities, including the Federal Reserve and all of the others that buy that debt and buy U.S. debt. Goldman Sachs is just one of many that have put themselves in this pole position. Not that the U.S. debt is great. I mean, it gets downgraded over and over again. And if you're an economist, you might have noted that, guess what? We're paying all of our money to taxes, and that money's just paying off interest. And so if you think that the American people are going to pay into these bonds over the next 100 years, you're not watching what's happening in Cyprus and looking forward to what could happen in other Western countries. I mean, this is the Eurozone, and other countries are affected. People in other countries are being held to account for what is happening there. But one of the great things that has happened for the American people is that people are buying more dollars. And that's because they are trying their best to get out of these Cypriot banks and other banks across Europe. Spanish, Italian, Irish, you name it. And that's why this week was the week of Bitcoin. Bitcoin has taken on a lot of heat over the last 2 weeks, and it's also become a very, very big talking point for most of the financial world, because I think at one point this week it was up to $160 per Bitcoin. Now, they've used Bitcoin and been able to really pump up Bitcoin because of the Cypriot crisis. So when you look at, who benefits from crises, it's Bitcoin. That doesn't sound nice. You're like, oh man, that's a shame. But there are lots of people that are doing anything they can. And it's a complete, I think, sign of desperation when you're taking your life savings and putting it into Bitcoin. Not that might be a bad thing ideologically, but if your wallet's hacked, if you're one of the people that's affected by these hacks, and I can only imagine that if Bitcoin starts getting more of a market hold, that there will be more attacks, more of them being authored and state and financially supported by Goldman, other bad actors, non-state actors. It would only serve the best interest of those central banks to do everything it can to destroy Bitcoin, because Bitcoin ultimately is a cryptocurrency. It cannot be inflated. It's open source, and you can You can make transactions directly to other people. If you are witty enough, you can make it somewhat anonymous, though it is a digital transaction, and I don't honestly believe that anything that is digital is truly anonymous. And I think that, heed my warning. We're going to find out that most of the people that have been using Bitcoins will probably be tracked and traced, and the government will say, yeah, we knew where all that money was going, but we were trying to track international terrorists and criminals that were using the Bitcoin. But the idea that there's no transparency to government scares the hell out of these central institutions. They're way behind on so many of these issues. I mean, if you look at what's happening with Defense Distributed and DefCAD in Austin, Texas, you have a young man that's a 24-year-old entrepreneur that's printing guns, lower receivers for AR-15s, high-capacity magazines, and being able to create those in his own home. And now I think he actually was given a federal firearms license, so he can actually manufacture these plastic weapons. And there's all sorts of new materials that you can put into these three-dimensional printers, like the MakerBot and others, to create these serialized, or in this case non-serialized, central units for gun manufacturing. So here's the deal. There's no law. The ATF doesn't have a law against you manufacturing a gun. You want to make a zip gun, you want to make pretty much any kind of weapon you want, that's okay. You can do that. The ATF doesn't regulate that too much, but even if they do, even if what you're doing is illegal, that's not going to stop people from doing things that are illegal. People do things that are illegal all the time, and the U.S. having the largest prison population in the world per capita is a fine example of you can create all the laws you want, but that doesn't mean that people will follow. So they're trying to have a national registry for anybody to transfer firearms, and you have the UN gun treaty, which would create this control mechanism for the distributing of guns around the world. And then, of course, the United Nations and the U.S., who sponsored it, will get to say, well, these guys get guns, these guys don't. And if Russia supplies weapons, munitions to Syria, they're facilitating genocide. We can sanction them. We can use the political apparatus of the global court, the World Court, the World Bank, the IMF, and others to punish them for supporting others that are fighting against the United States or their own people. Wink, wink. Not that I'm a Bashar al-Assad fan, but I call a spade a spade. He's definitely a spade, but you look at all the other backers and the people that make that happen, that allow that to happen. So I think his name's Cody Wilson. Cody Wilson has the three-dimensional printer, and you can download a gun right now, and you can print it, and you can have your own AR-15. So these laws become null and void, nullification through technological advancements. So government's always behind, way behind. Okay, yeah, they can tell you that you can't go, you have to get a permission from the government to get a gun. Sure. But in 5 years' time, you'll be able to print every bit of this. And you can currently today in your own home. There's nothing illegal about it. It has no serial number. I mean, you could probably just melt the thing if you're done with it. So all of these debates are really null and void. And the reason I talk about it is just because it proves the agenda. It proves what they're trying to accomplish through this draconian control. But if you look at the 3D printer technology and the ability for people to make guns, period. I mean, there's guns that are made out of wood. If you really want one, you can make a wooden gun. People shoot them, and they do a good job at killing others. So in other governments that have been doing the same thing, modeling and downloading these prints, will be able to create guns. You're not going to be able to ban every polymer that you could put into a three-dimensional printer. So at some point, they're not going to need these treaties are they're good gotchas, I guess, if you want to, go after a country or point to the fact that they are doing something without the permission of the world government. But still, they're not able to really enforce these things. It's just like, most most laws, they're not able to enforce them. They might catch you after the fact, but they're not going to prevent you from killing. You're not going to change the intent. So it's just these bankrupt arguments that the American people continue to have over and over and over again. And I think that's what we're doing here. It's so important to really destroy these ideas. So, all right, we've got about 22 minutes left in the very first inaugural podcast of Blacklisted Radio. No commercials, completely supported by you. You can support it. You can donate to the website. We have an array, a plethora of different things that you can do to help us get out to more people, to expand the listenership and the community of Blacklisted Radio and the Blacklisted Nation, if you will. And so definitely check that out. I think that we're going to take on the value for value model here with the new podcast. And this is something that's still kind of in its inception. I mean, me doing the show here like this and for 2 hours, that's pretty slated. And then all of the interviews that we will be doing impromptu during the week. I've got a lot of those scheduled, but this whole experiment has, I think, turned out pretty well. At least the positioning and the laying out of content. So we're going to have some more segments. I do want to get suggestions from you. You can text those in 512-222-3067 throughout the week. So if you think of things that would benefit, or different things that could be integrated in the show, guests that you'd like to hear, people that are really putting some great content out, great information out that we need to expand this discussion. And I think a lot of the shows will be discussions. I think more and more we're going to have guests, but I was really, really worried about the ability to talk for 2 hours without having too many slowdowns in the broadcast here. So there was this report, and I did want to mention this, about conspiracy theories. And conspiracy theories and the conspiracy community has really expanded over the last several years, especially over the last, I would say, 5 years. And more people I talk to that have no idea of my political leanings or my background, more and more of those people are, coming up to me and saying, I don't trust the government. 9/11 was an inside job. Have you heard about this? I'm being approached by more liberty activists just in my day-to-day life. And so I know that it's really getting out there, and that more and more people are seeing the problems that we have in the federal government, and that it's not representing the people, and that it could be conspiring against them. So Before It's News is a website that allows people, kind of like the Examiner, to post their own uncensored content, and I like that. Mort Amsel has this piece. Poll: almost 1/3 of Americans believe in the New World Order. 1/3, 33% of Americans believe that there is a new world order. However, despite the constant media drumbeat about the clear move toward centralization of power being a baseless conspiracy theory, the poll reveals that 28%, almost a third, of Americans believe that a secretive power elite with a global agenda is conspiring to eventually rule the world through an authoritarian world government or new world order. Well, isn't that what's happening? Isn't that what we hear all the time? Barack Obama said it best. He said that he wants to create a world order that we all have a stake in. It's just common sense. It's common sense, people. We need this new world order to facilitate and to create the transition to a harmonic state where we don't have war, where we don't have apartheid, where we don't have the problems that we have today, because everybody's going to be on the same team. We're all going to be holding hands. It's going to be like one of those Coca-Cola commercials where we and the polar bears are all just hugging one to one and touching each other, blah, 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 blah. Yeah, I mean, and it's silly because the notion that that's going to happen in our lifetimes, at least, without a huge mental revolution is silly. It's a ridiculous notion, and most people believe that is where they're pushing. And I don't believe this at all. I don't believe that there is ever going to be a world order. I don't believe that you're going to have central authoritarian control over billions of people on this planet. I don't think you're going to have central control over towns in the United States of America. I don't think you're going to have central control over individuals and what they do on an individual basis. I don't think you're going to have control over how people procreate or the adverse, how people decide to kill one another. You're not going to have central control over a lot of these issues. And see, it's a misnomer because you couldn't have one central control, one authority. Things would collapse, in my mind. I do subscribe to Leo Strauss's theory that if you had no controversies, if everything was pretty much a very flat and universal world, that people would just become disinterested with it and they wouldn't have any reason to serve the state. We could actually, get on to better things. And I don't believe that that's the right way to go about it. I don't think that you need to create government necessity through crises. We have government created for and by crises. It's usually taxing crises that we have to look at as ways to rally the people. You want to rally the people? Start taking their money away from them. Now, that's what globalization and global government is accomplishing, and that is the New World Order, and that is that everyone has to pay a fair share, wink, wink, into this global slush fund that will be used to fix the world. But you have to have constant contention. You have to have constant fear to keep people under wraps. If people aren't in fear, if people do not fear the government, if they do have one world harmony, people will no longer need the government. They'll never need these systems of control that are currently being formed to protect us. Now, it's bullshit. I know it's bullshit. And that they're not protecting you, and that they're not interested in you and protecting the people. I'll give you an example. Look at what's being sequestered, or what is being blamed for the sequester. Oh, we can't take care of the 9/11 survivors and heroes that protected and tried to do their best to help and save people's lives on September 11th, 2001. So what do? Let's sequester the crap out of those people. Who else needs help? Cancer patients. Yes, cancer patients, VA cancer patients. Let's not give them any more chemo. Not that I'm a fan of chemo, but let's let them just sit around and let those tumors metastasize. No big deal. That's how we save money. You start looking at everything that they've cut and want to cut. It's not insane things like Obamacare. It's common sense things like your rights and your retirements. They're even throwing together this idea of going after Social Security and using that to back new loans. Let me see, I just pulled that up. I mean, talk about convoluted in government that does. I think most people have just kind of given up on the idea that anything's going to make sense. Here's an example. Tens of thousands of Obamacare navigators. Yeah, a navigator to be hired. I guess we'll kind of wrap up the show with this thing here. Tens of thousands of healthcare professionals, union workers, and community activists are going to be hired as quote-unquote navigators to help Americans choose Obamacare options starting October 1st, and they could earn up to $20 an hour, according to new regulations issued Wednesday. Just seems that that's a very low amount of money for somebody that's a healthcare professional that's going to be navigating me through this this lawyer's web of deceit and lies known as the national healthcare system. I would want somebody that was making $30 an hour to be able to navigate me, because we're talking about my health. I don't know. Maybe $20 an hour is great, and Timbuktu, but $20 an hour is not going to get you very far in New York City. It's not going to get you very far in LA. The proposed requirements would also include that such entities and individuals provide consumers with information and assistance in the consumer preferred language at no cost to the consumer, which would include oral interpretation of non-English languages and the translation of written documents in non-English languages, and when necessary to ensure meaningful access, said the regulations. Meaningful access. What is that? How subjective that could be. And of course, the navigator. Okay, well, you're old. You don't get any health care. See, I'm navigating you towards death. The angel of death over here. You're old and no longer a good resource for the state. So we've decided to go ahead and curtail your care. I hear it all the time. A good buddy of mine, I'll name drop. His name's Dan, one of my best friends. We were talking about the sad instance this week where I had to put my best friend, my dog down, and he was just lamenting that he believed that we needed to have this for people. And I said, okay, do tell. He's like, people end up the last years of their life spending all of their life savings, giving it over to the pharmaceutical industrial complex, giving it to the doctors that know that they can't save you. And people just want to hold on to this life, and they will do anything, maybe even their family members, to try to save it, even if it's not something that the person, the individual wants. You might not want to live anymore. I mean, I love life, and I couldn't contemplate suicide, but I'm not 80 years old and I don't have terminal cancer. I'm not, I don't have dementia. I don't have some of the other things that would maybe kind of push me in that direction to wanting to end my life. But I'm only 35 years old. At 97, it might seem like something that, you've been here long enough. Your time has come. But the one thing I noted, and I believe that, in a fair and free world, you can do whatever you want. You can kill yourself. I wouldn't recommend it, but I believe that would be okay. It's illegal to kill yourself because it becomes a public burden. Just like all of these things, they're public burdens. You go jumping off a bridge, they have to clean up your body. So if you don't die, well, you get labeled a loser, and then you have to pay or maybe even go to jail for the attempted suicide. But it was just sad because you realize that, number one, that things have gotten so skewed and so out of control that rather than figuring out ways to expand and to brighten life, most of us focus on the best way to get out of this place. And I'm not somebody that's a huge birthrights advocate. I do think that you have the right to be born. I don't think people should kill you before you're born. I'm not, but I'm also a pragmatist, and I believe that if people don't want other human beings in their life, that they could probably just give them up for adoption. There's other avenues, but we have a lot of real problems. Why don't most people give children up for adoption? I mean, even if you did, it's really hard to adopt an American child. It's very hard. So I look at those issues. Those are real issues. It's really hard for a nice, well-intentioned family to be able to get a child and to adopt a child in this country. And that's why people go to China, they go to Russia, they go all over the world trying to get a system where it's just easier. Now Russia doesn't want U.S. parents to adopt, and I think they've put some kind of embargo forward. Not that I was going to get a Russian child, and I don't know how many of you out there were either, but it's so hard to bring a life into this world, but yet everybody's focused on how to get out of here. And that was my takeaway. I mean, I agree with the guy. I believe that, you shouldn't go bankrupt and it would be better to hold on or to transfer your wealth to those in your family that have helped you obtain that wealth and would benefit their lives more than just going into some state taxing system. Asset forfeiture to the state. It's a no-brainer. And I think that if we could look at other issues, societal issues, and fix those, then all of these other things from abortion to death panels probably wouldn't be at the forefront of our minds. We wouldn't be thinking about those things because they wouldn't be nearly as big an issue for people in this country and around the world. So, yeah, navigators. If you need a job, you can become one of the tens of thousands. Now, we don't really know yet how many navigators they're going to hire, but in California alone, they're looking at over 10,000 of them. Government is ever expanding. So is the pharmaceutical industrial takeover of this country. But we'll wrap it up here. We've got about 5 minutes. Non-invasive mind control lets humans wag a rat's tail. And so this is the real deal. This is where you realize, oh man, most of those prescription drugs and all those plans, that's very important for people. But this technology, it blows me away, and it's going to transform the way medicine and I think the way people define life. I mean, what is life? The only thing that ends our life currently is our inability to regenerate brain cells, the degradation of our cell structure, and our host bodies. But, okay, if you could put your mind into the cloud and control avatar bodies or other animals' bodies, oh man, I mean, it kind of blows your mind as to where we will be in 100 years. Okay, so this came out of Motherboard. Let me tell you a mind-bending story about mind control. This is a sci-fi idea that's quickly becoming a reality as scientists better understand that gray matter between our ears, and this year has been one for breakthroughs. The latest comes from the Boston area, where Harvard Medical School researcher teams have whipped up a way for a human brain to be in control of a rat's brain. And the video there speaks for itself. Blacklistednews.com is the place to get that. And this guy is just thinking about it. And this isn't even this is just a non-intrusive neural interface. So they don't actually have anodes or different probes into the rat's head like we've seen in some of the other creepy experiments. But the fact that the guy can wag the rat's tail with his thoughts, it just blows me away as to what we will be able to do. And you look at the mouse. It's a technology that we use currently to be able to browse the internet and to use our computers. And sure, the neural interfaces, the mind interfaces are already there, but I mean, it goes one level beyond, where people will be able to put themselves into animals if they want to be an animal. You ever want to be a dolphin? You can do it now, bro. You can float around. You can actually be those things. And I think it's pretty funny to think that wouldn't actually happen. I mean, people would want to become dogs and cats, and well, now it's somewhat limited, but you can become a rat. So, I just want to thank all of the people in the chat room there that have decided to show up for this inaugural edition of the Blacklisted Radio Podcast. We're going to do this every Saturday morning. We're going to kickstart the stream, technology allowing, around 9 a.m. Central Standard Time, something like that, or 10 a.m. Eastern, in that general vicinity. And then at 10 a.m., we will launch the live show for 2 hours. And I think that this was a great 2-hour breakdown of a lot of the news that came out over the week. I know that we will be able to do a lot more in the future because I won't have so many personal issues that will take some of the attention. So really excited about doing this independently and kind of going out here into uncharted territory with this show the time slot, all of it. So it's been really fun, and I hope you enjoyed the podcast. There are plenty more of them to come. If you're a fan of live radio, don't worry, there will be plenty more of it in the very near future. So go to SpreakerRadio.com or Spreaker.com. A lot of the other Oracle broadcasting hosts, James Freeland, Mike Chambers, to name two, Nemo DeNovo, I know are using Spreaker as kind of a launch pad for at least the embedded players that we're using at blacklistedраdio.com. So you're going to find a lot of the other Oracle hosts there. Please support them as well. Oracle was always about the hosts and, of course, more importantly, the people that find value in the content. That is you out there, the listeners and sponsors of these shows, and really the independent thought that goes into them, the people that appreciate that. And that's what's really, I think, so special about what we're going to continue to do. Not to hype it up too much. I mean, it's a podcast. We're recording audio content, and we are going to be distributing on YouTube and the like. But I think it's going to be a really neat, creative experiment, and I'm already pretty excited about doing it. So I'm going to be putting a lot more time and passion and love into this, and it's going to be great to have so many of you that I haven't seen in a long time be part of it as well. So with that, thank you so much for tuning in. Let's see. And we'll roll out with the outro. And yeah, we'll be back next Saturday morning at 10 a.m. Central Standard Time. You can follow me on Twitter. Keep up with all the impromptu shows and interviews and the like. They'll be at blacklistedраdio.com. And on Twitter, you can follow us. Our handle is Blacklisted News. You can also text me through the week if you find something crazy and you want to share it. 512-222-3067. Thank you so much for tuning in. And until next time, take care.